And welcome, Hoosier fans, to another episode of Doing the Work, the first show on the Back Home Network dedicated to covering IU women's basketball. Today is our 163rd episode, recorded on the evening of Wednesday, May 7th, 2025. And I'm your host, Kathy Amos, joined by my co-host, Jeff Marlow. And today we will be looking at the Hoosiers' incoming freshmen. But before we dive into the news and freshmen and answering a few questions, this is what we have ahead. We do start every show with our banner moment. And Jeff, for me, I'm going to go with, I believe it was earlier this week. My days are running together, but earlier this week, I think it was announced that Coach Morin was again the coach for the USA under-19 team. She was the head coach for this team last year, and they did quite a bit of great work there. And she's been picked again to be the head coach. And I picked this for my banner moment, Jeff, because I think if anything, it does a nice job of giving Coach Morin the ability and opportunity to talk with potential incoming recruits, whether they're going to be recruits immediately as freshmen, or who knows if we ever see them again come up in the transfer portal. I think this is a great opportunity for that, because we know that making some of these relationships now is incredibly important. It always is, but I think almost even more important as people continue to transfer. As an example, we do have our player coming in, Big Z, coming in from UCLA. We had originally been recruiting her as a freshman. Now, I don't know that she was on the U19 team off the top of my head, but there's an example of where making relationships, even if they don't commit as freshmen, could pay off later down the road. And this is a good opportunity, again, for Coach Morin to get in the door with potential recruits. So to me, that was our banner moment. And our banner moment is brought to you by Home Field Apparel, presenting sponsor of the Back Home Network, which includes Assembly Call, Crimson Cast, X's and Joe's, and the Dribble Drive. Home Field is constantly releasing new schools or updating its products or schools in its existing line. So you're bound to find something for you or anyone in your life that loves great collegiate gear. And it's not just collegiate gear. They've really branched out and expanded their product line. So if you're looking for great apparel, just go out to homefieldapparel.com and use our promo code HOME23 to get 15% off your first order. Again, that promo code is HOME23 for 15% off. The website is homefieldapparel.com. Wear one for the team. All right. So before we jump into previewing some of our two freshmen that are coming in, we do have some news. So I already mentioned Coach Morin being the head coach for the U19 team. For those of you that are in the Bloomington area, if you haven't yet bought them, season tickets are on sale. So you can go out and purchase their season tickets. The home and away for at least the Big Ten was announced. It's exactly like we expected. It was the flip of how we played last year. So for our home games, we'll have Iowa, Michigan State, Minnesota, Northwestern, Penn State, Purdue, Washington, and Oregon. And then we'll go on the road to Illinois, Maryland, Nebraska, Ohio State, Purdue, Rutgers, Wisconsin, UCLA, and USC. Additionally, we had the Little 500, and I mentioned that solely because Chloe Moore McNeil and Sydney Parrish were both marshals, along with Coach Signetti for the Little 500. So it was fun to see some pictures of them out and about and doing activities. And then our last transferring out player was able to find a home, and that was Hannah Sandvik. She landed in Wyoming. So those are some of the news headlines we've had in the last couple of weeks. But before we do much more, let's get Marlow's musings. Jeff, anything on your mind about the schedule or any other news that's kind of on your brain?
No, honestly, I don't have a whole lot. I really don't. I mean, it's that kind of down period where we're still kind of in the process of finishing last season. We know who's all transferred out, almost everybody. And then we know people who are coming in. Now there is one, Kathy, I cannot remember her name, but there is a transfer in the portal who is coming next week to look at Indiana, also in a battle with Iowa yes. for this transfer. So, and I can't remember her name off the top of my head, but that would be something to keep an eye on there. And other than that, I know we're going to have this question a little bit later, but honestly, the schedule, I think, the only thing is I think the tough part of the schedule will be on the road this year, which you don't, that's kind of what you expect. You expect tougher games on the road in the Big Ten. So the better teams, USC, UCLA, you would think Ohio State, Maryland are going to be on the road. And so you got to make hay at home. Again, it's going to be a tough league, but you got to win those games at home. And we'll know more about this team by conference time next year anyway. But we're going to talk about some of the transfers in June. But right now it's kind of a downtime. School's winding down. Finals are this week. Some of the kids are moving out of the dorms, and stuff. A lot of the kids moving out of the dorms and stuff. So it's just kind of where it is, and that's kind of where it is for me. I just don't have much to offer right now, other than what we are specifically going to talk about tonight.
Exactly. Emily Rodriguez. She's the UCF transfer. She will be in Iowa on May 12th and Indiana on May 13th, at least as reported per the Twitter sphere. So take that with a grain of salt, I guess, if you will. Although I think that seems like it's pretty laudable. So, Jeff, a little bit more on the schedule. I agree. I think it seems pretty brutal. Again, the road schedule this year, which we expected, though, right? I mean, these are the top 10 or the top teams are like you expected. Especially the two California teams, Maryland and Ohio State. I think right now they're projected the top 4 early, but they are all 4 on the road. So, but not really any surprise. So it will be interesting to see how we get there in terms of like the timing, like how we know the USC and the UCLA games will be, fairly close to being back to back. And then I'll be curious to see how those other home and away games get paired up, or if they make any difference. Changes from last year.
And honestly, the question I've got will be actually not this coming season, but the season after, because if the women are not going to expand the season, if they're going to stay at 18 games, you realistically aren't really going to change who you're playing. As long as you're going to keep the double play with, in this case, Purdue, you're playing everybody else once. I don't know. Is there any incentive for the Big Ten to change exactly how you're playing teams in terms of on the road and versus home? I mean, for example, if in 26-27, are you going to make IU go back out to UCLA and USC 2 years in a row? I just don't see unless they're willing to go to a 20 game schedule. I don't think the schedule really changes from here on out.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was wondering too when I saw that. I mean, we expected it for next year that it would just flip on its head, right, in terms of home and away. But in theory, I guess you could get it shifted at least so you don't have the same pairings year in and year out in terms of always going on the road to those 4 that we mentioned, or always being at home with those or whatever. So, it will be interesting to see if they decide to mix that up. What are your thoughts on expanding the conference tournament or the conference play? So, Jeff, I mean, that would match what the men do already.
Yeah.
For it, against it, I guess I don't have any strong feelings either way.
I'm not sure I have strong feelings against the. I kind of would like the 20 games because I'd like to play a couple more teams twice.
Right.
But I just think that if you switch it up and say 26-27, I'm not sure it switches a whole lot, because I do think travel and cost is something they're going to keep in mind. They're not going to have you fly out to LA. And then, and now maybe they'd have you fly to LA and then go up to Washington. Maybe they would do that, but they seemed pretty, not just for IU, everybody seemed to be kind of the same cluster of you went out to LA kind of for a weekend. You went to Washington, you went to Eugene or Seattle for a weekend, and then, vice versa, if they were the ones traveling. So maybe you could flip flop some of the Ohio State, Maryland, Michigan, maybe Michigan State, some of the closer teams. But I think the pairings, maybe at least the West Coast pairings, have to kind of stay the way they are. But as far as expanding, and the other thing is, I guess Kathy is more along the line is with the way football drives everything. Will the league expand? Here in the next year or two, or in the next few years. So and that would bring more teams in.
And, the other question then is, and my assumption here is if they do expand the women to 20 games instead of the 18, I don't think they move the Big Ten tournament, because then you're going to overlap with the men. So I think all that is going to end up doing is eat into your non-conference schedule. And then now teams are going to have to decide, do I take 2 games away? And I'm assuming, again, they would play Big Ten games earlier, more of them potentially in December. so that they can keep that Big Ten tournament at the same time. And then the teams are going to have to decide, it's like, well, I lost 2 non-conference games, filled in with my conference ones. Do I, take away my bye games or whatever? So I think there's a lot of ramifications of changing it, but I do think it might be something to consider if they don't, to your point, expand the conference.
Well, and the other thing with that though is they are limited on games. The NCAA has a max number of games they can play. So if you add 2 more conference games, you're losing 2 non-conference games.
That's right.
And that's good and bad, because if you're trying to build wins up for tournament resume, that's, those non-conference games, essentially you're thinking are wins as a Big Ten team, but your I hate to call it RPI, but your net would probably be a little better with 2 extra Big Ten games. So it's just it's to me, it's a wash, but I would kind of like to see them go to where the men are with 20. But if I had to say, I had to pick one, but I'm not on the bandwagon. I'm not leading the cheerleading squad for expanding to 20 either. I kind of like where they're at right now.
Yeah. That's why I don't have any strong feelings either way, but I was just kind of curious, some thoughts. I mean, again, there's a lot of pros and cons to both. So,
right.
All right. Well, Jeff, let's jump into the meat of our program here tonight, which is to talk about our incoming freshmen. So just as a reminder for our listeners, if you've forgotten, we have 2 official freshmen coming in. We do have a redshirt freshman in Sydney Finn. Technically, we covered her last year, so we're not going to re-preview her, if you will. So if you're interested, we certainly can try to dig some of that show back up and repost it, or even talk about it in our next show. But tonight we are going to only concentrate on our 2 incoming freshmen, Nevaeh Caffey and Maya Makalewski. So Jeff, why don't we start with Nevaeh Caffey? She's the 5'10" point guard coming to us from St. Louis, where she played for Incarnate Word. Just as a fun fact for that, they just won their 8th straight basketball title there in Missouri. So Jeff, you want to take us through Nevaeh and tell us a little bit more about her, if you've seen any film on her, what you think we can expect, and I'll jump into.
Yeah, and I may not know. Maybe it's I thought it was pronounced Nevaeh, but I could be wrong. Okay.
I could be too. We'll learn
it's
it
heaven.
before the season.
I just know that I know this. I have had a friend of a friend whose daughter was Nevaeh, and it's heaven spelled backwards. So I don't know.
Okay, we'll go with Nevaeh then. Once they put out the pronunciation guide, we'll get it straight for our listeners. So we'll go with Nevaeh.
Yeah, 5'10", and like you said, out of St. Louis, played for Incarnate, where they've won 8 straight. She was ranked at number 67 in the ESPN recruiting rankings. She was the Miss Show Me Basketball, meaning she was the Miss Basketball in Missouri. She averaged 17 a game, just over 3 rebounds, 2.5 assists, just over 2 steals as a senior. She can make the 3, but she's kind of what this program to me has been lacking a little bit. Kathy, is to me, what little film I've seen on her. And again, you always see highlight film on internet of kids like this, and it's always going to make them look good. But what I see as a kid who has really good vision, but she can get by people off the bounce. And I think that's one thing that even when we had good point guard play, it wasn't a strength of our point guards to be able to get by a lot of people on the bounce. And so I think that's where you'll see Nevaeh Caffey have an opportunity, and bring something that this team has been missing. This program has been missing. I hate to make player comparisons, Kathy, but I think the one that I see here a little bit, at least watch her on film and from a size perspective, only maybe not as good a 3-point shooter, but I'm trying to remember, is Jalen Penn. But I can't remember Jalen as when she came in as a freshman, how good a 3-point shooter she was. But in terms of build and kind of that, that kind of, to me, it's what she reminds me of a little bit. I'm not saying it's an exact player match, but I kind of see Jalen Penn here with Nevaeh Caffey. Mid-range is supposed to be a really good strength. Again, this is a team that has, that relies on the 3 a lot, and has really relied on solid post play to get open 3s. But I just think the thing that she brings, and I'll turn it back over to you, is I just think that ability to get past people on the bounce, to create off the bounce, I think will be that takes away some of the stress of having to have a dominant post player. If you have somebody who can get by people on the bounce, then people have to come and help, rather, and that leaves for open shooters. So I think, in my opinion, having not seen the team obviously put together yet, I think there's a chance for Nevaeh Caffey to play a lot of minutes as a freshman.
Yeah. You know what, Jeff, I did too. After, I watched some film video, whatever you want to call it, highlights from her again. They're for the most part going to pick out the highlights that really is going to highlight them. It's called
Yes.
highlights for a reason. And I couldn't really find a whole lot in terms of like more full game featured with her. But she also, what I'm really intrigued by her is that she looks like she can be, is going to be a really good defender. And that was one thing I actually read a couple of articles as well as the videos that said, from her coach that she is actually really good on both ends of the court, and that she's a really good rebounder. And so I can see why Coach Morin and the staff really wanted to recruit her, because if we think again about what Coach Morin kind of emphasizes, defense and sharing the sugar are two things we know are things you're going to see most often in a Coach Morin squad. And those are two of the things that came up quite often about her in terms of strengths. And, I thought she had really good vision on the court too. Again, high school, who knows how that translate, blah, 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 all of those caveats, but she really seemed to know how to find her teammates as well. And so that's what you want from your point guard, right? You want her to be able to get her own shot off the bounce, like you mentioned. I love the defense being, that head of the snake, if you will, but most likely defending the other team bringing the ball down, and the fact that she's a good distributor. And who knows what this mid-range is going to see. We have seen players come through Indiana with good mid-range fit right into that system as well, and not necessarily a strong three-point shooter. Not that I'm comparing her to Grace. Grace played a different position or whatever, but we know that can fit in too. So I'm really excited about her after watching a lot of the film. I had read a lot of people with their excitement and stuff, but now that I've seen film on her, really did a big deeper dive on it. I think you're right. I think if she's not starting, I think she's going to end up playing significant minutes as well. My question for you on her is this, and again, I know we haven't really highlighted the transfers yet, and I can't remember, is Phoenix Stotine, is she a point guard or is she more of an off the ball guard? Do you remember on the transfer coming in from Arkansas?
I thought she was more off the ball.
I did too. Okay. That's what I remembered as well. So with that assumption, I'm not seeing anybody in our guards that is a true point guard. Shea Chesky isn't really going to be your point guard. I can see that Nevaeh might actually slot in at that starting spot at point guard, but do you have any initial thoughts on that? I know, again, once we do a deep dive and see the full roster, we'll have a bigger idea, but here on May 7th, do you have any initial thoughts if she might actually start?
Well, I think she could start. Problem is, but again, that's the other thing too. She's 5'10". This is not a 5'7", 5'6" player. So kind of my first initial thought was her and Shea in the backcourt together may make us a little smaller, but she is 5'10". If she's a legit 5'10", then I think you can get away with playing the two of them together. But I think that Sean in the chat and the Workaholics asked it, would she start in front of Shea? Maybe not in front of Shea, maybe at least initially. But I just think that she's going to play a lot of minutes. She may not start, but I think she's going to be, again, we're going to talk about this throughout the offseason. We've talked a lot about it since we started the show, that freshmen don't tend to play a lot, and B, we don't play the bench a lot anyway. But I think I think these are a couple kids that are going to see some minutes here more than we're used to seeing freshmen get.
Right. That's right. And Erin Richardson on Twitter, she asked that too. And we'll give our thoughts here on the second freshman a little bit, but she was wondering thoughts on true freshmen getting impactful minutes this season. Not traditionally the way Coach Terry Morin runs her team, but I wonder if that might change. In this case, I do. I mean, we did see that from Yarden, so it's not necessarily out of the realm of question. And to your point, I think Jalen Penn, didn't she, as a freshman? I thought she got some, and Grace did as well, got significant time. So it's not necessarily out of the realm. We just haven't seen it a lot, especially here recently with our recent freshmen. The last one would have been Yarden when she came as a freshman. I can see Nevaeh getting significant run time here and potentially even starting. Anything else that you?
No. Why don't you take Maya?
All right. Maya Makalewski is coming to us as a 6'3" forward. She is coming by way of Fishers, Indiana, which is her high school is Hamilton Southeastern. Just as a fun fact, she was the same high school as Sydney Parrish. So she was ranked number 57 coming in, and she was Miss Basketball for Indiana, Jeff. So that's great because now we have Miss Basketball for Indiana and Miss Basketball for Missouri. So another fun fact for her, basketball runs in her family. Her mom played for Villanova. For those of you who might have missed it, she has an older sister, Riley. She played for Butler last year, and she just transferred to West Virginia this year. Then a quote that I found from her high school coach, and I just wanted to kind of put this out there to kind of summed up what I kind of saw from her game. So if Maya has a wide open three, she's probably going to hit at least 2 of 3, if not all 3. That's the type of confidence I had in her. And I know she has the same confidence in herself. And to that point, her senior year, she shot 40% from 3 and 48% from the field goal range and 80% from free throws. So for a 6'3", taller player, she did not seem to be lacking at all in shooting. And she wasn't a true back to the basket from what I saw, kind of forward, Yeah, so she's definitely more of a wing. She's not a down low player. She can score. She overtook Sydney as their high school program all-time scorer at 1,933 points in there. The one thing that I saw from her, Jeff, that probably is going to need a lot of work if she's going to see any significant time, in my opinion, again, watching just some game film that I did find on her, is her defense. There was a number of times that she had her the offensive player she was defending drive past her and get a fairly easy look at the basket. I was able to find like clips of an actual game that she was in and not just her highlights. And so that I was able to find some more where she was playing defense. And to me, I think that is going to be the biggest place she needs to make a leap. Again, this is Kathy's opinion on May 7th, having seen, 5 minutes of film on her. So don't take that with a grain of salt. I think that's her biggest thing that's going to keep her off the floor next year.
Yeah, I could be wrong, but I think she's going to play a lot of minutes. I think the Maya could very well be the type of player that steps in almost like a yard and starts from day one. To me, she's Sydney. She is very much, and to me, in fact, maybe a little more, I don't want to say more athletic, but much more of a get out and fill lane type player. She is, to me, what I see when I watch her on film as a true wing, is somebody who can go inside, outside, knows how to get open, can knock down the three, kind of understands the game. The one thing, again, I haven't seen a lot of defense. Sometimes you get into some of those high school games, you don't want your star player to pick up fouls. So they're almost, if somebody beats you, just let them go. But what I see is a kid, young player who very much to me reminds me of Sydney Parrish. And I know that seems simplistic since they're coming from the same school, but sure. Again, Sydney Parrish could shoot the three, but she could put her back to the basket and score on the block. She could take off the dribble a little bit and get to the rim. She wasn't blown by a lot of people, but she had enough skill level to be able to do it. Sydney, very good rebounder. I think that's the one area maybe when you look at Maya, and I was kind of looking at some of her stats on Max Preps a little bit, her career stats. Yeah. She averaged 7 rebounds a game this year. Her numbers were her scoring was actually down a little bit this year. She averaged about 26 a game as a junior. And so down. Now, maybe that's because the rest of the players on the team were all a little bit better. Maybe they were blowing out more teams and she played a few less minutes, per game. But her rebound numbers went up every year. And so that's, I think that's, to me, the comparison. And I'm also to this point, I know Coach Moran's going to stress defense. I get that. But I think this team has to get their most athletic and their best players on the floor. And again, I think we got to be deeper. And that's why I think Maya's going to play a ton of minutes, because I think we got to get deep. And I think she has the chance. I'm not saying she will. Again, we're talking May 7th. I see a kid that there's a chance for her as a freshman, especially, to step in there and start.
Yeah. Again, like I said, I've only seen about 5 minutes of film on her or whatever. And so that was just the one thing that I thought might keep her from seeing significant time. I think she is going to play quite a bit. So you think she has a chance to start? We think then Nevaeh definitely has a chance to start. So in theory, we could be starting 2 freshmen next year.
Yeah. Would be the first program.
No, might be the first in our program history, but or at least in our
Well,
Coach Morin.
it very well. I take it. Well, but what you would be is what you're getting here, Kathy, is before we started the show, this would be Amanda Cahill, Tyra Bustime.
That's
Those
right.
were two freshmen who started, I think Amanda started as a true freshman, and we know Tyra did. So I think, to me, that's kind of what you're seeing here is maybe at least at the same time where the program feels like, I hate to say down, but in flux.
Rebuilding.
The program's enough in flux enough that two freshmen can come in and be like, hey, we got nothing to lose. Let's get these freshmen out here and let's get them in the fire.
Right. That's right. And then, it's not like the returning players that we have, like we mentioned last time in our last podcast, we just don't have a lot of proven production, if you will, coming back anyway, whether in our transfers or in our returning players. There's only, what did we decide? 3 players, I think, that had double-digit minutes last year. So we're going to have to find players, whether they're freshmen or they're sophomores are not, we're going to have to be comfortable, and Coach Morin and the staff are going to have to be comfortable playing players that just don't have the experience. And whether that's a freshman or not, we're going to have to.
The one player we're forgetting, and we were kind of talking about this before we went on the show, and this is on me for being on this podcast and kind of hyping Nevaeh. I think Nevaeh is going to play a lot of minutes, but I think we've also got to remember Lene Beaumont's going to play. If Lene's healthy, we need Lene, at least at the beginning of the season, we need Lene. From what I've seen, and I've been on the Lene Beaumont bandwagon for a while, but I think Lene Beaumont will play a lot of minutes and most likely start. So that might be why Nevaeh doesn't start.
Yes, I thought about that too, Jeff. My counterpoint to that again is I don't see Lene as a true point guard, and I really see Nevaeh as more of that true distributor, getting the offense started, getting us into it. And so that's where I'm still kind of, I haven't again looked at all the transfers, but if I'm thinking about my starting guards right now, again, on paper, I'm leaning towards Lene and Shea for sure. And then I can see Nevaeh slotting in there unless Phoenix is going to be a point guard. Because I just think that I don't see Lene and I don't see Shea as really what I consider true point guards. Again, that doesn't mean they can't be, right? Because Chloe became more of a point guard. Grace played point for us. So
your problem is Shea and Lene in that case. In your scenario, Shea and Lene are basically the same player.
Could be. You were definitely playing a lot smaller.
Well, and not only that, but again, so that becomes an issue. So you play Nevaeh because she's your point guard. You play Shea, you play Lene. Now you're playing Maya at the 4. That may be where you find some of your defensive liability, but we'll see how it plays out. We're here on May 7th trying to figure some of this stuff out. And I don't think we have any answers yet at all.
Clue. We have no clue what they're thinking. So, Jeff, any other thoughts on terms of what we've the 2 freshmen? We already answered one kind of question from our listeners as well. But any other thoughts specifically on our 2 freshmen that are coming in?
No, I think we talked. I've hit everything I wanted. One.
Me too. All right. So let's go ahead and hit some more of these questions. So Larry on Substack had one question for us. And I don't really know that we can answer this, but no one is daring to ask Terry. She says, I'd love to ask Coach Morin how confident she is that she has upgraded her roster enough that 5 to 6 scholarship players don't spend 90% of every game connecting splinters on the bench. So yeah, now that we got right now anyway, we have 12 scholarship players. Do we have an over-under, Jeff, on if 5 to 6 of those end up, riding the bench half of the year, or 90% of the time? I think is what Larry is asking.
Larry, I hope not. I really don't. I want to see this, but Kathy and I have been on this for a while. We really want to see this program play more players and get more depth. The other problem you've had is this is a team that has run into some injury issues over the last 3 or 4 years, whether it was Grace Berger or Mackenzie Holmes or Sydney Parrish or Lene Beaumont, so, right now to a certain degree, you also got, I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus because sometimes just there are freak injuries, but when they start piling up a little bit, you got to wonder a little bit about some of the strength and conditioning issues there, if there are any strength and conditioning issues there, because it just seems like we've had a real run of injuries to people who we thought, obviously Grace being the senior she was, Mackenzie, but those kind of, those injuries to a certain degree. And I still think Lene being hurt all year cost us a couple games. Yeah. They can make a difference. And if you win a couple more games, you're not playing South Carolina in the round of 32. You're playing somebody else with a chance maybe to go to the Sweet 16. So those have been kind of program defining injuries. And so not only do we need to be more depth, we got to stay away from the injuries a little bit.
That's right. Yeah. Who knows, that could have gotten us up to a higher seed line too, with just a couple more wins and
that's what I mean,
and whatnot. So absolutely. Good point. I agree. I don't know, Larry. We know when, we're sitting here, we're not insiders, unfortunately, on the program. We don't have special contacts or anything, but I just, again, the way that it's shaking out, I think we're going to have to be comfortable playing a lot more people, less minutes, if that makes sense. So, or more minutes from our bench, if you will. Maybe that's a better way to say that. So, okay, so he was Sean. So we had quite a few questions from Sean Donahue. One was on our Big Ten schedule. I think we already talked about that, so we'll skip that one. And then he wanted to know if Sydney Finn and Lene Beaumont have been cleared to play yet. I did search around a little bit. The last that I could find, Jeff, and maybe you found some more recent, was in Coach Morin's press conference after our game against South Carolina, where she mentioned that Lene was really on good track and she was expected to be able to go back to full contact practice here in May. I haven't seen or heard anything that contradicts that timeline. She didn't give a timeline for Sydney Finn. Sydney Finn, again, is was our freshman this year. And I'm assuming she got a red shirt. So she did say that her surgery was way more intense and significant than Lene's was. And so there was no specific timeline on Sydney Finn. So I couldn't find anything more recent than that. But that kind of led me to believe that if Lene was on track and doing really well for May, I would guess Sydney Finn has probably still not been cleared to get back to full practice.
Which would lead me to believe that maybe, I'm speculating because we never get much on injuries from this program, maybe Lene had, I hate to say simple, but Lene had a simple ACL reconstruction, whereas maybe if that's the case, if she's talking about being more intense, and then maybe, what was the other word you used besides intense?
Significant. It was more of a significant surgery. Yeah.
That makes me wonder if she had multiple ligaments, like a PCL as well, that had to be repaired, maybe a kneecap that had gotten dislocated. So if that's the case, then hopefully we see Sydney Finn starting to get some clearance in the summertime. Kathy, I'm going to take your word for it, because I don't look up. I honestly, I don't get too big into when I'm assuming that Lene is going to be cleared when it's appropriate for her to be cleared, and the medical staff will have a good handle on that. But if it's again, in this day and age, a simple ACL repair where they're going in and putting a new ligament in there, and it's all done microscopically, and you're basically in and out in an hour or two, or whatever an ACL surgery runs these days. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when they had to cut your knee open to do the surgery, let alone just go in with drill a couple holes in you. Then I think as long as Lene's healthy by the summer, I'm not going to have any worries, because I just think it's a matter of her. She's going to have to get back some conditioning. I'm sure they've had her on the bike. I'm sure they've had her in the pool and stuff, but it's not the same as getting up and down the floor. And so
that's right.
And so that'll be, I think, the one thing that I will be interested to see come next season, if let's assume they both are healthy enough to start the season, which we think they will be. Are they wearing a brace of any kind? And if they are wearing a brace of any kind or a sleeve of any kind, how bulky is it? I've always felt like once a player could get past that point where they felt like they needed the brace, because a lot of times the brace ends up being as much psychological as anything, then that's when you really kind of know they're back, because they're not thinking about the injury. But I'm excited about Lene. I to a certain degree want to see what Sydney Finn can do, because I think she brings some size. She's not a 5'9", 5'8" type player. She's, she has a little bit of size. So, but she was always going to be a little bit more behind. She was not playing per se at one of the premier programs. She had gone from Buffalo to a prep school out in Arizona. So I'm not saying the prep school wasn't any good. I think she was going to need a little more skill development and kind of get acclimated to the college game anyway. So, but I think they'll both be ready.
Yeah. Yep. So that's unfortunately, Sean, all we have is pretty much speculation outside of that. So then the last question, I think we kind of touched on this last time, was what will the returning and incoming players have coming up in their schedules during the summer? Will they get some time to visit their families? Will the transfers go to their new schools once finals are over? So as Jeff mentioned, at least for Indiana, they're on finals this week. I would be shocked if they don't get any time off to go visit family and do what they want to do for a little while. I think last time our speculation was sometime after Memorial Weekend, which is right coming up at the end of May. So either last week in May or first weekend in June is when we would expect to see everyone on campus. That would include all of the transfers as well. But I don't have any basis for that. I haven't seen anything. Again, they don't really announce it until all of a sudden on Twitter, there's like, hey, look who's on campus. And then we all know. But that would be my guess. It's probably early June.
Yeah, I'm curious because with finals being this week, I'm kind of looking to see real quick if I can find what the dates are for summer school, because that would obviously take a little bit of when they're going to be on campus, because that is going to be, and I can't find the date right off my let's see real quick. I'm trying to look it up. Real quick, May 13th, summer close school. Yeah, so see, summer session 1, I think, begins next week. So I doubt you'll have players in by then. I think you'll have more along the line, but they could be. And again, when I talked with Grace Berger a few years ago, if I remember Grace right, that they usually Coach Moron gave them about a week after classes were done to go home, see family, get away, because they're going to spend the biggest chunk of the summer now in Bloomington. That goes for pretty much at least every revenue type sport, football, men's basketball, women's basketball. They're expected to be on campus all summer long, with a few exceptions. They get some time to go home and, weekends and things like that. But they're expected to be there and so that's why I remember talking, I remember seeing this about the men's program, and then I talking with Grace, and we've talked with a few of the players as well, that so many of them are getting their undergrad degree by the end of their junior year because they're taking a full load of classes and taking full load of summer school, basically,
That's right.
With that. So, and I know, like, when, with Grace, she was in grad. I mean, she got that 5th year anyway, but I think she was already in grad school when she was a senior with her 4th year and stuff. So, so I expect them to be on campus somewhere right around Memorial Day, maybe slightly before Memorial Day, depending upon the summer schedule in terms of when certain classes are starting, but definitely by that Tuesday after Memorial Day, I think they'll all be back on campus, and that's when they'll be expected to be doing their workouts and playing their open gyms and stuff. And so that's when I think you'll start to hear some things coming out, especially as you get to the middle of June. And we're hoping to get, we've been lucky enough to have Lene on the last couple of years and talk with her a little bit. We're hoping to get her on sometime in the summer again with us, and maybe we can, find out from her or somebody else that, one of the players, what's going on. But I know they'll get some time. It's a matter of how much Coach Moran wants to give them. But I know it's sounding like I'm rambling here, but it's about a week, I think, that they usually get after school's out.
Good. All right. Well, there you go, Sean. So now as much as Jeff and I do, and we'll find out here together as the month progresses. But that wraps it up, Jeff, for all of our listeners' questions that we had submitted. So why don't we go ahead and do some final thoughts and get some music, and then I'll talk about our what's next coming up for the show this year.
Yep, I didn't see the music there. I thought we were supposed to do final thoughts and then music. Here we go.
You are. I'm waiting for you.
Oh, you're waiting for me to do final thoughts?
Yes.
We're going into final thoughts. I thought you were talking. Yes. You were going to go. Anyway, so we're messing up the production.
Final thoughts, Jeff.
we're production. I'm excited. I really am excited about Nevaeh Caffey. I'm excited about Maya Makaluski because I think the recruiting. Again, numbers don't always impress me, but I think this is a program that has missed on with the run they've had. Has missed on some high profile, high rated recruits. Now, is that because as we've gotten more recent, is that because we have been behind on NIL? I don't know. I think there've been some relationships, some good relationships. Will be interesting is to see the new assistant coach that's coming in from Alabama, what kind of relationships he's been building, and can he quickly get in with some of the Indiana high school coaches, and we start getting a nice run of those types of players, especially keeping them home. So it'll be interesting to see how quickly those relationships get built. And along with that, so can we get some higher? And again, I don't get caught up in stars, but higher rated recruits, and can the NIL situation get rectified enough that that's kind of working together to get higher rated recruits. So, but I'm excited about McAlusky, and I'm excited about Caffey.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's hard not to get excited when you have 2 Miss basketballs from their home states coming in, right? And that's going to make 3 now for our roster. So we can't forget that Lene was Miss Basketball for Illinois when she came in too.
Spreen was Miss Basketball in Indiana the year before.
That's right. Thank you for. And then if we really want to get nitpicky, we can talk about Allie Papper being on the coaching staff.
Well, so true. Jules was Player of the Year in Texas, though, so we lost her. So
she was, so we lost her though. But yeah, so we got there. You go. So we got 4 current players that are Miss Basketball of their homecoming state, and it's hard not to get excited about that. I know it's a small class of only 2. And at the time we didn't really need more than the 2, but. And I don't know that we do now either with the transfers that we have coming in. We got that 12. And as we mentioned, we're at least in the mix for at least 1 more player with Emily Rodriguez, which would really shake up everything that we've been kind of talking about, I think, here. If we can beat out Iowa, and there was one other big school that was looking at her in her final mix. But anyway, keep an eye out for that, because that is going to be next weekend. So hopefully, at the end of next week, we might see another commitment. So I'm with you. I also think that new coach coming in from Alabama is going to be interesting. He's known for recruiting in particular. So I'm excited to see what he might bring down the road, whether it's recruiting transfers or it's recruiting true freshmen. So, but yeah, with you, I'm very excited for both of these players. And I do expect that I'll see quite a bit of time from both of them, whether they start or not. So those are my final thoughts. Okay, so up next for Jeff and I, we're going to take a break. We have been going every 2 weeks. I am going on vacation. My husband has a big birthday coming up next week. So we are going, feel very, very sorry for us. We're going to Costa Rica for about a week and a half. So we'll be gone during our normal 2-week thing. So we decided to just take a break, and we will come back sometime in the first week of June. We're figuring out exact schedules and what we're going to do. Our current plan right now is in June, we'll split up the transfers and start doing deep dives into the transfers that we know have committed. And then in July, we're going to try to target and get maybe some fun guests on. Like Jeff mentioned, we are going to reach out to Lene again. We've interviewed her the last 2 years. We're going to see if we can get her 3 years in a row. We'll see what the budget and the piggy bank holds for us here at the Back Home Network to see if we can do that or not. But we have a couple other folks we're going to try to reach out to as well to see if they can come on the show and kind of help fill in with some new voices as well. But in terms of the exact show next, it will be in about a month. That first week in June, we'll get a first exact date to you later. And if you do want to see us do the show live and be part of the live chat, make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can find us at youtube.com/@BackHomeNetwork. You can be part of our private community as well. Find out more at assemblycall.substack.com. A special thanks to John Ringer of Riggs Design for designing our logos. A big thank you to Bob Thompson for the music you heard throughout the broadcast. Thanks to Jeff for being a fabulous producer and co-host tonight. And most of all, thanks to everybody that is listening, whether you're here live or listening after the fact. We love having your interaction and appreciate it. And we will be back to talk IU hoops with you in about 1 month. But until then, keep your elbow in, your eyes on the rim, and let's go Hoosiers. All right. And I guess I should mention here in about 45 minutes, for those of you listening live, the Assembly Call guys will be coming on and doing a Assembly Call show talking about the men's program. So if you want to take a 45-minute break and jump back on YouTube, you can jump on with the guys here in about 45 minutes. So I should have mentioned that too. But Jeff, it was a lot to talk about again. Not too bad for early May. So I'm glad we had some nice interaction with the workaholics here and good questions beforehand. So
Yes, sir.
thank you. And I will see you in about a month.
See you guys in a month.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.